When my daughter-in-law told me to leave her house, I didn't cry. I didn't shout or beg or fall to my knees like they do in the movies. I just stood there in the hallway holding my suitcase and I smiled. Not because I was brave. Not because I didn't care. But because somewhere deep inside, I knew this moment had been coming for a long time. I had been living in their home for 3 years. 3 years of helping with the grandchildren, cooking dinners, folding laundry, and trying to be useful. 3 years of believing I was doing the right thing. But that afternoon, as I looked into her tired eyes, I realized something that broke me from the inside. I had never asked her if she wanted me there. I had assumed. I had decided. And now, standing in front of her with nowhere else to go, I understood that love without permission can feel like a burden. My name is Margaret, and this is the story of how I lost my place in my son's home, and how I found myself again in the quiet that followed. This is the story of how good intentions can sometimes cause the deepest wounds. This is the story of a mother who forgot that her children had grown up. And this is the story of how I learned that letting go is sometimes the greatest act of love. Let me take you back to the beginning. Not to the day I moved in with them, but to the years before that. The years when I was still living in my own home, the house my late husband Robert and I had built together over 30 years. Robert and I met when we were both 23 years old. He was working at a hardware store, and I had come in looking for paint for my first apartment. He helped me choose the perfect shade of cream for my bedroom walls. He made me laugh. He had kind eyes and a gentle voice. 3 months later, he asked me to marry him. We got married in a small church with only our closest family and friends. I wore my mother's wedding dress, altered to fit me. Robert wore a suit his father had given him. We didn't have much money, but we had each other. And that felt like everything. We bought our first house when I was 25. It was a small 2-bedroom home on the edge of town. The paint was peeling, the floors creaked, and the heating barely worked in winter. But it was ours. We spent weekends fixing it up together. Robert would hammer nails and paint walls while I planted flowers in the garden and hung curtains in the windows. We dreamed about the life we would build there, the children we would raise, the memories we would make. And over the years, those dreams came true. Daniel was born when I was 27. He was a calm baby with big brown eyes and a sweet smile. Robert used to hold him for hours, just staring at his tiny face in wonder. I remember those early mornings when Daniel would wake up crying, and Robert would get up before I could, gently rocking him back to sleep. He was a wonderful father from the very first moment. Emily came 2 years later. She was different from Daniel. She was loud and energetic and always laughing. She filled our home with noise and joy. Robert used to say that Daniel was the calm river and Emily was the ocean storm. And he loved them both with everything he had. Our lives were simple but full. Robert worked long hours at the hardware store, eventually becoming the manager. I stayed home with the children when they were young, and later I worked part-time at the local library. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had enough. Enough for birthday parties and Christmas presents. Enough for family vacations to the lake every summer. Enough for Sunday dinners around our kitchen table. Those Sunday dinners became a tradition. Every week, without fail, we would sit together as a family. I would cook a roast or a casserole, and Robert would carve the meat. Daniel and Emily would tell us about their week, and we would listen. We would laugh and talk and just be together. Those were the happiest moments of my life. When Daniel grew up, he became an accountant. He was always good with numbers, even as a child. He was responsible and thoughtful and kind. He met Claire at a work conference when he was 28. Claire was a graphic designer. She was creative and smart and had a quiet confidence about her. When Daniel first brought her home to meet us, I could see how much he loved her. The way he looked at her. The way he listened when she spoke. The way he smiled when she laughed. It reminded me of how Robert used to look at me. They got married a year later in a beautiful outdoor ceremony. I cried happy tears as I watched my son promise to love and cherish this woman for the rest of his life. Robert stood beside me, holding my hand, and whispered, "Our boy did good." And he was right. Claire was wonderful. She fit into our family perfectly. She was warm and kind and always made an effort to include us in their lives. When they had their first child, Lily, I was overjoyed. I became a grandmother, and it felt like a whole new chapter of my life was beginning. 2 years later, Ben was born. 2 beautiful grandchildren. I visited them often, bringing cookies and toys and spending afternoons playing with the kids while Claire and Daniel worked. But I always went home at the end of the day. Back to my house. Back to Robert. Back to our life together. Emily moved across the country when she was 25. She married a man named Tom, a kind-hearted teacher she met at a friend's wedding. They settled in a small town on the coast, far from where Robert and I lived. I missed her terribly, but I was happy for her. She called me every week and we talked for hours. She told me about her new job, her new friends, her new life. And I told her about the garden, the library, the neighbors. Life was good. Not perfect, but good. Robert and I grew older together. Our hair turned gray. Our bodies slowed down. But our love remained steady. Every morning we had coffee together on the porch. Every evening we watched the sunset from our kitchen window. We held hands. We talked about our day. We planned small trips and quiet weekends. We were content. And then one Tuesday morning in June everything changed. Robert was mowing the lawn. It was a warm day, and he was wearing his old blue shirt and the baseball cap I had given him for his birthday. I was inside the kitchen making lemonade. I looked out the window and saw him wiping sweat from his forehead. He waved at me. I waved back. And then he collapsed. I dropped the pitcher I was holding and ran outside. I screamed his name. I knelt beside him on the grass and held his hand. His eyes were closed. His breathing was shallow. I called for an ambulance, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. They came quickly, but it wasn't quick enough. By the time we got to the hospital, Robert was gone. A massive heart attack, they said. He didn't suffer, they said. There was nothing anyone could have done, they said. But none of those words brought him back. I sat in the hospital hallway, holding his wedding ring in my palm, and I felt like my entire world had shattered. 62 years old, and suddenly I was alone. The funeral was small. Daniel and Claire came with the children. Emily flew in with Tom. Friends and neighbors filled the church. Everyone said kind things about Robert. They talked about his kindness, his humor, his generous spirit. But I couldn't hear any of it. I just sat there, numb, staring at the casket and wondering how I was supposed to live without him. After the funeral, everyone went home. Emily stayed for a week, helping me sort through Robert's things. We packed his clothes into boxes. We organized his tools in the garage. We put away his books and his records and all the little pieces of him that still filled the house. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. When Emily left, I was alone. Truly alone for the first time in my life. The house felt too big, too quiet, too full of memories. I wandered from room to room, touching things that used to be ours and were now only mine. His chair in the living room, his side of the bed, his coffee mug in the cupboard. I tried to keep myself busy. I went back to work at the library. I joined a grief support group at the church. I forced myself to eat, to shower, to get dressed every morning. But inside I was hollow. I missed him so much it physically hurt. I missed his voice, his laugh, the way he used to hum while he worked in the garden, the way he held me when I was sad, the way he made everything feel safe. Daniel called me every day. He checked on me constantly. He visited on weekends with Claire and the kids. They tried to cheer me up and I appreciated it. But the moment they left, the loneliness came rushing back. One evening, about 6 months after Robert's funeral, Daniel came over for dinner. I had made his favorite meal, pot roast with mashed potatoes. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, just like we used to when he was a boy. He looked at me with concern in his eyes. "Mom," he said gently, "how are you really doing?" I tried to smile. I always tried to smile for my children. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I'm managing." He reached across the table and took my hand. His hand was warm and strong, just like his father's. "You don't have to pretend with me, Mom. I can see you're struggling." I felt tears prick my eyes, but I blinked them away. "I just miss him, Daniel. I miss him so much." "I know," he said softly. "We all do. But Mom, you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to stay in this big house by yourself. Claire and I have been talking. We want you to move in with us." I looked up surprised. "Move in with you?" He nodded. "We have that guest room on the first floor. It's just sitting there. You could move in, help with the kids, be part of the family. You wouldn't have to be alone anymore." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately. The thought of not being alone, of being surrounded by family, of having a purpose again, was so tempting. But another part of me hesitated. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to impose on their lives. I don't know, Daniel. I don't want to get in the way. You wouldn't be in the way, Mom. We want you there. The kids would love it. Claire could use the help. And honestly, it would make me feel better knowing you're not here alone. He squeezed my hand. Just think about it, okay? I thought about it for 2 weeks. I walked through my empty house and imagined what it would be like to leave. I thought about the memories I would be leaving behind. But I also thought about the loneliness that filled every corner. I thought about the long evenings with no one to talk to. I thought about the empty chair across from me at the dinner table. And slowly I convinced myself that maybe Daniel was right. Maybe it was time for a change. Maybe I needed to be around family. Maybe I needed to feel useful again. So I called him and said yes. Daniel and Claire were thrilled. They helped me pack my things. We sorted through 30 years of belongings, deciding what to keep and what to give away. I kept my clothes, my books, my photo albums. I kept Robert's wedding ring and his favorite watch. I kept the quilt his mother had made for us when we got married. Everything else I let go. The furniture went to charity. The dishes went to neighbors. The house was put up for sale. And just like that, the life I had built with Robert was packed into boxes and scattered to the wind. On the day I moved out, I stood in the empty living room one last time. I looked at the walls where our family photos used to hang. I looked at the floor where our children used to play. I looked at the window where Robert and I used to watch the sunset. And I whispered goodbye. Then I locked the door and drove to Daniel and Claire's house. To my new home. Or so I thought. The first few weeks at Daniel and Claire's house were wonderful. Everything felt new and exciting. I unpacked my things in the guest room. A cozy space with soft yellow walls and a window that looked out onto the street. Claire had decorated it with fresh flowers and new bedding. She wanted me to feel welcome, and I did. The children were overjoyed to have me there. Lily, who was 6 at the time, would run into my room every morning and jump on my bed. "Grandma, you're here. You're really here." She would hug me tight, her small arms wrapped around my neck. Ben, who was 4, was a little shyer at first. But within days, he was following me around the house, holding my hand and asking me to read him stories. I felt needed. I felt wanted. I felt like I had found a new purpose. Every morning, I woke up early and made breakfast for the family. Pancakes with syrup and fresh berries. Scrambled eggs with cheese and toast. Oatmeal with cinnamon and honey. Daniel would come downstairs in his work clothes, grab a cup of coffee, and thank me with a kiss on the cheek. Claire would smile and say, "You didn't have to do this, Margaret." But I wanted to. I wanted to contribute. I wanted to show them that having me there was a good decision. After breakfast, I would help Lily get ready for school. I would brush her hair and tie it into neat ponytails. I would pack her lunch with sandwiches and fruit, and a little note telling her to have a good day. I would walk her to the bus stop and wave as she climbed aboard. Then I would come back to the house and spend the morning with Ben. We would play with his toy cars and build towers with blocks. We would read books and color pictures. We would have snacks and watch cartoons. I loved those quiet mornings with him. In the afternoons, I would clean the house. I would vacuum the floors and dust the shelves. I would do the laundry, folding each piece carefully and putting everything away. I would organize the pantry and wipe down the kitchen counters. I wanted the house to be perfect. I wanted Claire to come home from work and not have to worry about anything. And when she did come home, she would look around and say, "Wow, Margaret, you didn't have to do all this." But again, I wanted to. I wanted to be helpful. I wanted to earn my place. In the evenings, I cooked dinner. Roast chicken with vegetables. Spaghetti with homemade sauce. Beef stew with fresh bread. Casseroles and soups and pies. I cooked the meals I used to make for Robert and the kids when they were young. Meals that reminded me of family and home and love. Daniel would sit at the head of the table, and Claire would sit beside him. The children would chatter about their day, and I would serve the food, making sure everyone had enough. After dinner, I would clean up while Claire helped the kids with their homework. I would wash the dishes and put away the leftovers and wipe down the table. Then I would sit with the family in the living room. We would watch a movie or play a board game. I would help put the kids to bed, reading them stories and tucking them in. And then I would go to my room, exhausted but happy. I felt like I was part of something again. I felt like I had a family again. But slowly, without realizing it, things began to change. Started with small things. Little moments I didn't pay attention to. One morning, about 2 months after I moved in, Claire came downstairs while I was making breakfast. She was still in her pajamas, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She walked into the kitchen and paused when she saw me at the stove. "Oh," she said quietly. "You're already cooking." I smiled at her, flipping a pancake. "Good morning, dear. I thought I'd make the kids their favorite chocolate chip pancakes." She nodded slowly and poured herself a cup of coffee. She stood by the counter, sipping her coffee and staring out the window. She didn't say anything else. At the time I thought she was just tired. Claire worked long hours as a graphic designer, often bringing her laptop home and working late into the night. I figured she was stressed and needed rest. But looking back now, I see it differently. That morning, she had come downstairs planning to make breakfast for her children. She had probably been looking forward to it. A quiet morning in her kitchen, cooking for her family, being the mother she wanted to be. And I had taken that from her without even realizing it. A few days later, I noticed that Claire had stopped setting the table for dinner. She used to do it every evening, carefully arranging the plates and silverware, folding napkins, and placing a small vase of flowers in the center. It was her little touch, her way of making the meal feel special. But after I moved in, I started setting the table. Seemed like the helpful thing to do. I was already cooking, so why not set the table too? So I did. And Claire stopped. She would come home from work, see the table already set, and just nod. She never said anything. She never asked me to stop. She just quietly let go of that small ritual. And I didn't notice. One Saturday afternoon, I decided to rearrange the living room. The furniture had been in the same position for years, and I thought a little change might brighten things up. I moved the couch to face the window. I rearranged the armchairs and added some decorative pillows I had bought from a home store. I hung a few family photos on the wall in new frames. When I finished, I stepped back and admired my work. The room looked fresh and inviting. I was proud of myself. That evening, when Claire came home, she walked into the living room and stopped. She stood in the doorway looking around slowly. "You rearranged the furniture," she said. Her voice was calm, but there was something in her tone I couldn't quite identify. "Yes," I said brightly. "I thought it needed a little refresh. Doesn't it look nice?" The couch looked so much better facing the window. She didn't smile. She just nodded. "It looks fine," she said quietly. Then she turned and walked upstairs. I felt a small knot form in my stomach, but I pushed it away. I told myself she was just tired, that she didn't mean anything by it. Later that night, I was walking past their bedroom on my way to the bathroom. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I truly wasn't. But I heard their voices through the door. "She rearranged the living room," Claire said. Her voice was soft, but I could hear the frustration in it. "Yeah, I saw," Daniel replied. "It looks good, doesn't it?" "That's not the point, Dan." There was a pause. "Then what is the point?" "The point is, it's our house. I didn't ask her to change it. I didn't even know she was going to do it. I came home and my living room looked completely different. She's just trying to help, Claire. She's been through a lot. She's lonely. She doesn't mean anything by it." Another pause. "I know she doesn't mean anything by it, but I feel like I'm losing my own home, Dan." Slowly, piece by piece. I stood frozen in the hallway. My heart was pounding. I wanted to knock on the door. I wanted to apologize. I wanted to explain that I was only trying to help. But I didn't. I just stood there listening. "You're being too sensitive," Daniel said. "She's my mom. She's helping us. We should be grateful." "I am grateful," Claire said, her voice breaking. "But I also want to feel like I live in my own home." I heard her start to cry. Soft, quiet sobs that broke my heart. Daniel said something I couldn't hear, and then the room went silent. I walked back to my room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of my bed. My hands were trembling. I felt sick. I told myself that Claire was just stressed, that she was overworked and emotional, that everything would be fine in the morning. But deep down I knew something was wrong, and I was too afraid to face it. Over the next few months, the distance between Claire and me grew wider. She stopped talking to me as much. When she came home from work, she would say a quick hello and then go straight to her room. She stopped eating the meals I cooked. Instead, she would make herself a sandwich or heat up leftovers, eating alone at the kitchen counter. She stopped asking me to help with the kids. When I offered, she would politely decline. "It's okay, Margaret. I've got it." And she would do everything herself. Bath time, bedtime stories, homework help. Everything. Even when I could see she was exhausted. Even when I knew I could help. She didn't want my help anymore. I felt hurt. I felt confused. I felt rejected. I didn't understand what I had done wrong. I was cooking and cleaning and taking care of the children. I was doing everything I could to be useful. So why was she pulling away? One afternoon I decided to talk to her. I found her in the laundry room, folding a mountain of clothes. "Claire," I said gently, stepping into the room. "Can we talk?" She didn't look up. "Sure. What's up?" "I feel like something's wrong. Like you're upset with me." She paused, holding a small shirt in her hands. "I'm not upset with you, Margaret." "Then why do you seem so distant? Did I do something wrong?" She sighed and finally looked at me. Her eyes were tired. So tired. "You didn't do anything wrong. I'm just busy. That's all." I wanted to push. I wanted to ask more questions. I wanted to understand. But the look in her eyes stopped me. It was a look that said, "Please don't." So I didn't. I just nodded and left the room. That night I lay in bed replaying every conversation, every gesture, every moment. And slowly, painfully, I started to see it. The breakfasts I made without asking. The table I set without permission. The living room I rearranged without consulting her. The children I cared for as if they were mine. The home I had slowly, quietly taken over. I had done it all with love. But I had done it without asking. And in doing so, I had made Claire feel like a guest in her own home. The breaking point came on a rainy afternoon in October. It was a Thursday. I remember because Thursdays were always my favorite days. The children were at school, Daniel was at work, and I had the house to myself in the mornings. I would clean and organize and prepare dinner early so everything would be ready when everyone came home. That particular Thursday, I decided to deep clean the kitchen. I scrubbed the counters and organized the cupboards. I threw away expired spices and rearranged the dishes. I cleaned the oven and wiped down the fridge. I wanted everything to be perfect. Claire had taken the day off work. She had mentioned the night before that she needed a mental health day. She looked exhausted and I thought it was a good idea. I assumed she would sleep in and rest. But around noon she came downstairs. She was wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt. Her hair was pulled back and her face was bare. She looked young and vulnerable. She walked into the kitchen and stopped when she saw me. I was on my hands and knees scrubbing the floor. "Margaret," she said softly, "what are you doing?" I looked up and smiled. "Just giving the kitchen a good clean. It needed it." She stood there staring at me. "I was going to do that today," she said quietly. I sat back on my heels. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. But it's done now so you can relax." She didn't move. She just stood there looking around the kitchen, at the clean counters, at the organized cupboards, at the spotless floor. And then she said the words that changed everything. "Margaret, I need to talk to you." Her voice was calm, but there was something final in it. Something that made my stomach drop. I stood up slowly, wiping my hands on a towel. "Of course. What is it?" She walked to the kitchen table and sat down. I sat across from her, my heart pounding. She took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "I don't know how to say this without hurting you," she began. "But I can't do this anymore." I felt my chest tighten. "Do what?" "Claire, I don't understand. This. Live like this. Live in a house that doesn't feel like mine anymore." Her words hit me like stones. Each one heavy and sharp. "What do you mean? This is your house. Of course it's yours." She shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "It doesn't feel like it. Not anymore." I opened my mouth to speak, but she continued. "Margaret, I know you're trying to help. I know you're lonely. I know you lost Robert and you're trying to find your place. I understand all of that. But you've taken over everything." Her voice cracked. "The cooking, The cleaning. The kids. The decorating. Everything. I felt tears prick my own eyes. I'm just trying to be useful. I'm just trying to help you. I know, she said, wiping her eyes. But I don't need that much help. I need space. I need to be able to cook breakfast for my own children without feeling like I'm stepping on your toes. I need to be able to decorate my own living room. I need to be able to do my own laundry and clean my own kitchen. She looked at me with so much pain in her eyes. I wake up every day feeling like a guest in my own home. Like I don't belong here. Like this isn't my family anymore. It's yours. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face now. That's not true. This is your family. I would never try to take that from you. But you are, she whispered. Maybe not intentionally. But you are. We sat in silence for a long moment. The rain tapped against the windows. The clock on the wall ticked softly. And my whole world crumbled. What do you want me to do? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She took a shaky breath. I think it's time for you to find your own place, Margaret. The words hung in the air like smoke. Heavy and suffocating. You want me to leave? She nodded, fresh tears falling. I think it's what's best. For both of us. I need my home back. And I think you need to build a life of your own. Not one that revolves around us. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Where would I go? You could stay with Emily for a while. Or find an apartment. I don't know. But Margaret, I can't keep living like this. I'm losing myself. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw it. The exhaustion. The sadness. The quiet desperation of a woman who had been trying to hold on to herself while slowly disappearing. And I realized that she was right. I had been so focused on filling the emptiness inside me that I hadn't seen what I was doing to her. I had been so desperate to be needed that I hadn't asked if she needed me. I had taken over her home, her children, her life. All in the name of love. But it wasn't love. It was fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of being useless. And I had let that fear hurt someone I cared about. I stood up slowly, my legs trembling. You're right, I said quietly. Claire looked surprised. What? You're right. I should go. Margaret, you don't have to leave today. We can make a plan. We can. No, I said firmly. You're right. I've overstayed my welcome. I should have seen it sooner. I walked to my room, my vision blurred with tears. I pulled out my suitcase and started packing. I folded my clothes carefully, placed my books in a bag, wrapped Robert's watch in a scarf. I moved mechanically, my mind numb. Claire appeared in the doorway. Margaret, please. Let's talk about this. There's nothing to talk about, I said, not looking at her. You need your home back. I understand. I don't want you to feel like I'm kicking you out. I stopped and turned to face her. You're not kicking me out. You're setting a boundary. And I should have respected your boundaries from the beginning. I zipped up my suitcase and picked it up. I'm sorry, Claire. I'm so sorry for everything. She started crying again. I'm sorry too. I walked past her and pulled out my phone. I called Emily. She answered on the second ring. Mom? Is everything okay? I need a place to stay, I said, my voice shaking. Just for a little while. Can I come to you? Emily didn't hesitate. Of course. Always. What happened? I'll explain when I get there. I need to leave. Okay. I'll get the guest room ready. When are you coming? I'll book a flight tonight. Mom, are you sure you're okay? I will be, I said. I will be. I hung up and sat on the edge of my bed. I took a deep breath and tried to steady myself. A few hours later, Daniel came home from work. He saw my suitcase by the door and looked confused. Mom? What's going on? Claire stood beside him, her arms wrapped around herself. I stood up straight and looked at my son. I'm leaving, sweetheart. It's time for me to go. Leaving? Why? What happened? I glanced at Claire, then back at him. Your wife needs her home back. And I need to find mine. He looked between us, clearly lost. Mom, you don't have to leave. This is your home too. No, I said gently. It's not. It's yours and Claire's. And I've been here too long. But, Daniel, I interrupted. I love you. I love your family. But I can't stay here anymore. It's not fair to Claire. And honestly, it's not fair to me either. He looked like he wanted to argue, but Claire put a hand on his arm. He looked at her and something passed between them. Understanding. Sadness. Acceptance. He turned back to me, his eyes red. Where will you go? To Emily's. Just for a while until I figure things out. He nodded slowly. Then he stepped forward and hugged me. I held him tight, breathing in the scent of my little boy who had grown into a man. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispered. Don't be sorry. This is what I need to do. I pulled back and kissed his cheek. Then I turned to Claire. She was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. I walked over to her and took her hands. Thank you, I said softly. She looked at me confused. For what? For being honest. For telling me the truth. I know it wasn't easy. She squeezed my hands. I'm so sorry, Margaret. Don't be. You did the right thing. I let go of her hands and picked up my suitcase. I walked to the door, opened it and stepped out onto the porch. The rain had stopped, but the air was still damp and cool. I stood there for a moment looking back at the house, at the warm light glowing through the windows, at the family I was leaving behind, and then I turned and walked away. The flight to Emily's was long and exhausting. I sat in the window seat, staring out at the clouds, replaying everything in my mind. Claire's words, the look in her eyes, the way I had slowly, without realizing it, taken over her life. I felt ashamed. I felt guilty. But I also felt something else. Relief. Because for the first time in 3 years I was making a choice for myself. Not because someone needed me. Not because I was trying to fill a void. But because I needed to find my own way. When I landed, Emily was waiting for me at the airport. She ran to me and hugged me tight. Mom, are you okay? She asked, pulling back to look at my face. I nodded even though I wasn't sure it was true. I will be. She took my suitcase and led me to her car. We drove in silence for a while, the city lights blurring past the windows. Finally she spoke. Do you want to talk about it? I took a deep breath. Not yet. I just need some time. She reached over and squeezed my hand. Take all the time you need. You're home now. Home. The word felt strange. I didn't know where home was anymore. Emily's house was small but cozy. It was a pale blue cottage with white shutters and a front garden full of roses and lavender. She and Tom had bought it 2 years ago, right after they got married. Inside, everything was warm and inviting. Soft lighting, comfortable furniture, and photos on every wall. Tom greeted me at the door with a gentle hug. Welcome, Margaret. We're so glad you're here. Their baby, little Sophie, was asleep in her crib. Emily led me to the guest room. It was smaller than the room I'd had at Daniel's house. Just a single bed, a small dresser, and a window that looked out onto the garden. But it felt peaceful. I hope this is okay, Emily said. It's not much, but it's perfect, I said, meaning it. She smiled and kissed my cheek. Get some rest, Mom. We'll talk in the morning. That night, I lay in the unfamiliar bed and stared at the ceiling. I thought about Robert. I thought about the life we had built together. I thought about the home I had left behind when he died. And I thought about the home I had just left today. I had been running from grief for so long. Running from the emptiness, from the silence, from the reality that Robert was never coming back. And I had run straight into someone else's life trying to make it mine. For the first time in 3 years I let myself feel everything. The loss, the loneliness, the fear, the shame. And I cried. I cried for Robert. I cried for the mistakes I had made. I cried for Claire, who had been too kind to tell me the truth until she couldn't take it anymore. And I cried for myself. For the woman I had become in my grief. Lost, desperate, and afraid. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of birds outside my window. Sunlight was streaming through the curtains, warm and golden. I lay there for a moment, listening to the quiet sounds of the house. Emily humming in the kitchen. Tom's gentle voice talking to the baby. The coffee maker gurgling. It was peaceful. Different from the chaos of Daniel's house with the children running around and the constant noise. Different from the heavy silence of my empty house after Robert died. Just peaceful. I got dressed and walked into the kitchen. Emily was sitting at the table feeding Sophie. Tom was reading the newspaper and drinking coffee. They both looked up when I entered. "Good morning, Mom," Emily said with a warm smile. "Did you sleep okay?" "Yes," I said. "Better than I expected." Tom stood up and poured me a cup of coffee. "Milk and sugar?" "Just milk, thank you." I sat down at the table and we ate breakfast together. Toast with jam, fresh fruit, and yogurt. It was simple and quiet and lovely. After breakfast, Emily and I sat on the back porch while Tom took Sophie for a walk in the stroller. The garden was beautiful, full of flowers I didn't know the names of. Bees buzzed lazily from bloom to bloom. The air smelled like jasmine and freshly cut grass. "So," Emily said gently, "do you want to tell me what happened?" I took a deep breath and told her everything. I told her about moving in with Daniel and Claire. I told her about trying to be helpful, trying to be useful, trying to fill the emptiness inside me. I told her about the breakfasts and the cleaning and the rearranged furniture. I told her about the distance that grew between Claire and me. I told her about that rainy Thursday afternoon when Claire finally told me the truth. Emily listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached over and took my hand. "Mom," she said softly, "you were grieving. You were lost. And you tried to find yourself in their home. But you can't heal by disappearing into someone else's life." Her words were simple, but they cut straight to the heart of everything. "I didn't mean to take over," I whispered. "I just wanted to help." "I know. But intention doesn't erase impact." I nodded, tears filling my eyes again. I heard her. I made her feel like a stranger in her own home. "Yes," Emily said honestly. "But you also did something incredibly brave yesterday." I looked at her confused. "What do you mean?" "You listened. When Claire told you the truth, you didn't fight her. You didn't make excuses. You didn't try to convince her she was wrong. You just listened and you left. That took courage, Mom. I hadn't thought of it that way. I had felt like a failure. Like I had ruined everything. But Emily was right. I had listened. And that was something." Over the next few days, I slowly began to settle into a routine at Emily's house. But this time I did things differently. I didn't wake up early to make breakfast for everyone. Instead, I waited until Emily and Tom were awake, and I asked if they wanted help. Most mornings they said no thank you, and I respected that. I would make myself toast and coffee and sit in the garden reading or just thinking. I didn't clean the house unless Emily specifically asked me to help with something. I didn't reorganize cupboards or rearrange furniture. I didn't try to take over. Instead, I asked, "Emily, would it be helpful if I did the laundry today?" "Tom, can I pick up anything from the store for you? Would you like me to watch Sophie while you take a nap?" And if they said no, I let it go. I didn't push. I didn't insist. I just accepted their answer and found something else to do. It was hard at first. I was so used to being busy, to being needed, to filling every moment with tasks. But slowly I learned to sit with the quiet, to be still, to just exist without having to prove my worth through constant doing. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after I arrived, Emily found me sitting in the garden with a book. "Mom," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." She sat down beside me. "What do you want?" "Not what you think you should want. Not what you think would make other people happy. But what do you actually want for yourself?" I opened my mouth to answer, then closed it again. Because I realized I didn't know. For so long I had defined myself by my relationships. Robert's wife. Daniel and Emily's mother. Lily and Ben's grandmother. But who was I without those roles? "I don't know," I admitted. Emily smiled gently. "Then maybe it's time to figure that out." That conversation stayed with me. I started thinking about who I was beyond the people I loved. What I enjoyed. What made me feel alive. What I wanted my life to look like. I had always loved reading, so I started going to the local library. I would spend hours there, browsing the shelves and discovering new books. I joined a book club that met every Thursday evening. It was a small group of women, all different ages, who loved discussing stories over tea and cookies. I made friends. Real friends, not just acquaintances. Women who knew me as Margaret, not as someone's mother or grandmother or wife. Just Margaret. I started taking long walks every morning. There was a beautiful trail near Emily's house that wound through the woods and along a creek. I would walk slowly, breathing in the fresh air, listening to the birds, watching the light filter through the trees. Those walks became sacred to me. A time to think, to process, to just be. I also started volunteering at a community center. They had a program where seniors taught crafts to younger people. I had always been good at knitting, something my own mother had taught me when I was young. So I started teaching knitting classes twice a week. It was wonderful. The students were eager to learn, and I loved watching them create something with their own hands. It felt good to share my skills, but in a way that didn't take over anyone's life. I was contributing without consuming, helping without hovering, teaching without taking over. And slowly, week by week, I started to feel like myself again. Not the version of me who needed to be needed, but the version of me who could simply exist, who had value just by being. One evening, about a month after I had left Daniel's house, my phone rang. It was Claire. My heart stopped. I stared at the phone for a moment, afraid to answer. But I did. "Hello," I said quietly. "Margaret." Her voice was soft and warm. "How are you?" I'm okay. How are you?" "I'm good. Better, actually." There was a pause. I waited, my heart pounding. "I wanted to call and thank you," she said. I frowned. "Thank me? For leaving? I know that sounds terrible, but I needed you to go. And you did. You didn't fight me. You didn't make it harder. You just left. And I'm grateful for that." Tears filled my eyes. "I'm sorry, Claire. I'm so sorry for everything." "I know," she said gently. "And I forgive you. I just needed time to feel like myself again. To feel like this was my home again. And now I do." We talked for a long time that night. She told me that she had started cooking breakfast for the kids again. That she had rearranged the living room back to how she liked it. That she was doing the laundry and the cleaning and all the little things that made her feel like the mother of her own home. She told me that Daniel had finally understood what had happened. That they had long conversations about boundaries and family and what help actually looks like. She told me that the kids missed me, but they were okay. That they asked about me and sent their love. And then she said something that changed everything. "Margaret, I don't want you to think you can never come visit. You're family. You're always welcome here. But when you come as grandma. As a guest. Not as someone who lives here." "I understand," I said. "And that's how it should be." "I think so too." When we hung up, I felt lighter. Like a weight I had been carrying for months had finally been lifted. She didn't hate me. She had forgiven me. And she had given me a gift. The gift of clarity. The gift of boundaries. The gift of a relationship that could exist in a healthy way. A few weeks later, I went apartment hunting. Emily offered to let me stay with her as long as I needed. But I knew it was time for me to find my own place. I looked at several apartments before I found the one. It was a small one-bedroom on the second floor of an older building. It had hardwood floors, big windows that let in lots of light, and a tiny balcony where I could sit in the mornings with my coffee. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I signed the lease and moved in the following week. Emily and Tom helped me move my few boxes of belongings. We spent the day unpacking and arranging furniture. Emily hung curtains while Tom assembled a bookshelf. I put my books on the shelves, arranged my clothes in the closet, and placed Robert's watch on my bedside table. That night, after Emily and Tom left, I stood in the middle of my little apartment and looked around. It was quiet. It was small. It was simple. But it was mine. And for the first time since Robert died, I felt at peace. Over the following months, I built a life for myself. I decorated my apartment with things I loved. I filled it with books and plants and photographs. I established routines that worked for me. Morning walks, afternoon reading, evening knitting. I made friends in my building. An older gentleman named Frank who lived down the hall and loved to talk about history. A young couple with a new baby who sometimes asked me to babysit. A woman named Rose who invited me to join her for coffee every Sunday. I stayed connected with Daniel and Claire, but from a distance. We talked on the phone every week. I sent cards and small gifts for the children, and twice a year I visited. I would stay in a hotel nearby and spend a few days with the family. We would have dinners together, play games, go to the park. I would read bedtime stories to Lily and Ben and give them hugs and kisses. But when the visit was over, I would say goodbye and go back to my own home, back to my own life. And it felt right. Emily and I grew closer than we had ever been. We talked on the phone almost every day. She would tell me about Sophie's latest milestone or a funny thing Tom had said. I would tell her about my knitting students or a book I was reading. We visited each other often. Sometimes she would come to my apartment with Sophie, and we would spend the afternoon baking cookies or going for walks. Sometimes I would go to her house and help in the garden or just sit on the porch with her, talking about everything and nothing. Our relationship felt balanced. Equal. Not me taking care of her, but us taking care of each other. One afternoon, about a year after I had moved into my apartment, I was sitting on my balcony with a cup of tea. The sun was warm on my face, and I could hear children playing in the park across the street. I thought about Robert. I still missed him. I always would. But the missing felt different now. Not like a gaping wound, but like a tender scar. Something that would always be a part of me but no longer consumed me. I thought about the woman I had been 3 years ago. Lost and desperate and afraid. Trying to fill the emptiness inside me by taking over someone else's life. And I thought about the woman I was now. Quieter. Stronger. More at peace. I had learned so much in those years. I had learned that grief can make us do things we never thought we would do. That loneliness can make us grasp at anything to feel connected. That good intentions don't always lead to good outcomes. I had learned that love without boundaries isn't really love at all. It's suffocation. I had learned that helping someone doesn't mean doing everything for them. Sometimes the best way to help is to step back and let them do it themselves. I had learned that my worth isn't measured by how much I do for other people. That I have value just by existing. Just by being me. And I had learned that it's never too late to start over. To find yourself again. To build a life that's truly yours. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a text from Daniel. Hey Mom. Just wanted to say I love you. Hope you're having a good day. I smiled and texted back. I love you too, sweetheart. Having a wonderful day. And I was having a wonderful day in my own little apartment, living my own little life. And that was enough. It's been 2 years since I left Daniel and Claire's house. 2 years since I packed my suitcase and walked out into the rain. And I can honestly say that leaving was the best thing I ever did. Not because I didn't love them, but because I finally learned to love myself. I learned that after loss, it's easy to lose yourself. To forget who you are when the person who helped define you is gone. Robert was my partner for nearly 40 years. When he died, I felt like I died too. And I tried to come back to life by becoming someone else's everything. But that's not how healing works. You can't heal by disappearing. You can't find yourself by losing yourself in someone else's story. You have to sit with the pain. You have to feel the emptiness. You have to walk through the grief, not around it. And on the other side, you have to rebuild. Not the life you had before. That life is gone. But a new life. A different life. A life that honors who you were while making space for who you're becoming. I still visit Daniel and Claire twice a year. Last month, I went to see them for Thanksgiving. I stayed at a little bed and breakfast in town. A charming place with a fireplace and homemade breakfast. On Thanksgiving Day, I arrived at their house in the afternoon. Claire answered the door with a warm smile and a hug. Margaret, it's so good to see you. It's good to see you too, dear. She looked happy. Truly happy. Relaxed and confident and at ease in her own home. The living room was decorated beautifully, with autumn leaves and candles and family photos. It looked like her. Her style, her choices, her home. Daniel greeted me with a big hug and asked about my flight. Lily and Ben ran to me, excited and chattering about school and friends and all the things happening in their lives. I sat with them on the couch and listened to their stories. I admired Lily's drawings and listened to Ben describe his latest Lego creation. I was present with them, fully there, enjoying every moment. But I wasn't trying to parent them. I wasn't trying to take over. I was just being their grandmother. At dinner, we all sat around the table together. Claire had cooked everything herself and it was delicious. Turkey with all the trimmings, homemade rolls, pumpkin pie. We held hands and said what we were grateful for. Daniel said he was grateful for family. Claire said she was grateful for her home and her children. Lily said she was grateful for her new bike. Ben said he was grateful for dinosaurs, which made everyone laugh. When it was my turn, I looked around the table at these people I loved so much. I'm grateful for all of you, I said. And I'm grateful for second chances. Claire caught my eye and smiled. After dinner, I helped with the dishes. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Claire and I stood side by side at the sink, washing and drying, talking about everything and nothing. You seem really happy, Margaret, she said. I am, I said. I really am. Tell me about your life. About your apartment and your friends and everything. So I did. I told her about my knitting classes and the students who had become dear to me. I told her about my book club and the fascinating discussions we had. I told her about Frank and Rose and the young couple with the baby. I told her about my morning walks and my quiet evenings on the balcony. She listened with genuine interest. It sounds wonderful, she said. It sounds like you've really found yourself. I have, I said. It took a while, but I have. She dried her hands on a towel and turned to face me. I want you to know something, she said. I'm really proud of you. For leaving when I asked you to. For doing the hard work of building your own life. For giving us space while still staying connected. That couldn't have been easy. Tears filled my eyes. Thank you for being honest with me, I said. Even though it hurt, it was what I needed to hear. We hugged, a long, genuine hug. And in that moment I knew we were okay. More than okay. We had a relationship built on honesty and respect and healthy boundaries. And that was beautiful. Before I left that evening, I read the kids a bedtime story. We snuggled on Lily's bed, one child on each side of me, and I read about brave knights and magical kingdoms. When the story was over, I kissed them both good night. When are you coming back, Grandma? Ben asked. In a few months, sweetie. Maybe for spring break. Promise. Promise. I hugged them tight, breathed in their little kid smell of shampoo and cookies, and then let them go. Daniel walked me to the door. Thanks for coming, Mom. It means a lot. Thank you for having me. I love you, sweetheart. I love you too. As I drove back to the bed and breakfast, I felt full. Not the desperate, grasping kind of full I used to feel when I lived with them, but a peaceful, contented kind of full. The kind that comes from healthy relationships and clear boundaries and knowing who you are. Back in my own apartment now, I've settled into the rhythm of my life. Every morning I wake up and make myself coffee. I sit on my balcony and watch the sunrise. I think about Robert sometimes, remembering the good times with a bittersweet smile. I think about the journey I've been on, from loss to desperation to healing. And I think about the future, not with fear or uncertainty, but with quiet hope. I have plans, small plans, but they're mine. I want to learn how to paint. I want to travel a little, maybe take a trip to the coast. I want to write down some of the stories from my life, so my grandchildren can read them someday. I want to keep teaching and learning and growing. I want to keep being myself. Yesterday, I received a package in the mail. It was from Lily. Inside was a drawing she had made of our family. There was Daniel and Claire and Lily and Ben, all holding hands in front of their house. And off to the side, in a separate little house with flowers around it, was me. I was smiling in the drawing, surrounded by books and a cup of tea. At the bottom, in her careful child's handwriting, she had written, Grandma in her happy home. I put the drawing on my refrigerator and stood back to look at it. She was right. This was my happy home. Not because it was big or fancy. Not because it was filled with other people. But because it was mine. And I was finally truly happy in it. If you're listening to this story and you've ever felt lost after losing someone you love, I want you to know something important. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to feel empty and alone and afraid. It's okay to not know who you are anymore. But please don't lose yourself in someone else's life trying to fill the void. Don't take over their space, their home, their identity. Don't make them responsible for your healing. That's not fair to them, and it's not fair to you. Instead, sit with the pain. Feel all the feelings, even the hard ones. Let yourself be sad and angry and confused. And then slowly start rebuilding. Not the life you had before. That life is gone and that's okay. But a new life. A life that's yours. Find things that make you happy, not because they make someone else happy, but because they genuinely bring you joy. Make friends who see you for who you are, not just for what you can do for them. Create routines and rhythms that feel good to you. Decorate your space in a way that reflects your taste. Cook meals you want to eat. Wear clothes that make you feel like yourself. Take walks just because you like walking. Read books that interest you. Pursue hobbies that light you up. Build a life that's so full and so rich and so uniquely yours that you don't need to borrow someone else's. And when you're ready, love the people around you from that full place. Not because you need them, not because you're desperate to be needed, but because you genuinely care about them and want good things for them. Love them with healthy boundaries. Love them by asking, not assuming. Love them by respecting their space and their choices and their autonomy. Love them by showing up when they need you and stepping back when they don't. Love them by being yourself, not by disappearing into their lives. That's the kind of love that lasts. The kind of love that heals instead of harms. The kind of love that gives instead of takes. I know this now because I learned it the hard way. I learned it by making mistakes. By hurting someone I cared about. By losing my place in my son's home. But I also learned it by doing the hard work of healing. By facing my grief instead of running from it. By building a life of my own instead of living through others. By learning to be comfortable in my own company. By discovering that I have value just by being me. And now at 65 years old, I can honestly say I'm at peace. I miss Robert every day. But I've stopped trying to replace him or fill the space he left behind. I've accepted that the space will always be there, and that's okay. I love my children and grandchildren deeply, but I've stopped trying to live through them or define myself by them. I've accepted that they have their own lives, and that's okay too. And I love myself. Not in an arrogant or selfish way, but in a gentle, compassionate, accepting way. I love the woman I've become through all of this. The woman who made mistakes and learned from them. The woman who lost herself and found herself again. The woman who learned to let go. My name is Margaret. I'm a widow, a mother, a grandmother, a friend, a teacher, a reader, a walker, a knitter. But most importantly, I'm myself. Fully, completely, unapologetically myself. And that's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything. Sometimes the people we love need us to leave. Not because they don't love us, but because love isn't about how close we can get. It's about knowing when to step back. It's about respecting boundaries. It's about giving people space to be themselves. And sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is our absence. Not forever. Just long enough for them to breathe. Just long enough for them to remember who they are. And just long enough for us to remember who we are too. Thank you for listening to my story. May you find your own peace. May you build your own life. May you love without losing yourself. And may you always remember that you are enough. Just as you are. Right now. You are enough.